Today, let's talk about faith, fear, and doubt. I mean, isn't that kind of the foundation of our lives? Either faith, fear, and doubt. Faith kind of cancels out fear and doubt, but the lack of faith means you're living in fear and doubt. I have a lot of folks that write me, text me, call, and it feels like they're kind of stuck in a blender of life. And I say it like that because this one person that calls me, or actually he texts me because he has my phone number. He sometimes has these brilliant observations, and we have a nice little conversation, and then I get a text, "Alan, I need help." And then I said, "What's wrong?" And he says, "I'm not going to heaven. I know it. I know I'm not going to heaven." And doubt, right? Just doubt, fear and doubt. And then I'll say to him, "Beelzebub is lying to you again. The liar lies. Knock it off." And his answer's, "Okay." Sometimes we just need somebody to say something to, but then somebody turns the blender on. Somebody, the devil, turns the blender on, blends up all your thoughts, mixes them with poison, and then injects them right back into your mind, and there you are, fear and doubt again. So I've been having this conversation with this one person for months, and it's the same thing. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it is, "I'm going to hell." How do you go from brilliant observation, clarity of thought, to "I'm going to hell"? Faith, fear, and doubt. Faith, fear, and doubt, but it's actually faith or fear and doubt. So I want to just talk about my relationship with food lately, because you can learn from everything in your life. So I've been on this diet, and I was talking to my friends outside just a moment ago, and I said, what I'm enjoying about this diet is not this carnivore diet, not that I'm eating a lot of steak and things that I enjoy, but I really, after you eat about 5 steaks in a row, it's not that appealing anymore. It's like enough. But it's the relationship that I have to food, because it's waking me up to the improper relationship to food. But it's also giving me an opportunity to understand life from a different perspective. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Because when you are wrapped up and lost in the culinary world, food, the preparation of food, and how you make your food, and how you cook your food, and how long you bake your food, and it becomes an art and a science. Like, even on these steaks, it's really funny. I bought 5 steaks at Costco. And the first one, it was like, okay, that wasn't very good. And the second one, it was like, oh, maybe I'll do this. And all of a sudden, it turned into a distraction. Now I can picture myself like, Luigi the chef with the big hat on and the apron and the little curly mustache that's waxed on the end. I am now turning into the chef, and I start to feel proud of myself, because when I made the perfect steak, it was delicious, but I took pride in it. What is happening? So I looked at that and I went, wow, that is weird. So I looked at it, and it just kind of went away. So the next time I made a mistake, I'm like, get away, you weird cook. Are you chef? Who are you? Take your little curly mustache and your funny chef hat and go away. I just want to cook this steak. So all these things I'm becoming conscious of. And really what it boils down to is you have to begin life over. It has to start over. And maybe this is why the Christians call it born again. But my dad says you can call yourself a born-again Christian, and a born-again turkey is still a turkey. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. What matters is what actually is going on. So as I'm starting my life over on a spiritual journey this time instead of an ego journey, I don't want to be that chef. I don't want to say to my friends, "Oh, I can cook a steak. Come over and I'll entertain you and I'll feed you like a king," right? And I look at this and I think to myself, I just want to cook the steak. Simple. My dad tells you guys the story over his lifetime. We've all heard it about the apple. I want an apple. His mother says, "Nope, I'm going to show you an apple." She takes the core out and puts some brown sugar in it and bakes it. And she says, "Now that's an apple." It's not good enough the way God created it. She's got to fix it up and become the chef, the God. So I'm looking at how all these things, just from having a little simple diet, are teaching me about how corrupt my mind has become with food, how food has become my drug of choice. And even I'm not even a foodie. I like to eat in mass quantities, even better. And if the food isn't that good, I'm still going to eat it because I like to eat. And this is kind of that mentality. And so now, for some reason, as I'm eating steak and hamburger and fish and no vegetables, no bread, no sugar, butter, heavy cream, cheese, this diet is really kind of simple. It's strange. It goes against the thinking of, well, I've been taught you have to eat salad and you have to do this and that, but it's taking away my desires for sugar and things like that because it's altering the mechanical body. It's altering the way the brain thinks. She says it's altering my biome and my chemistry. Thank you. And I'm so thankful because, like I've said to you guys before, I have my stash of yum-yums, a little chocolate here and this, that, and the other, and crackers and stuff. And I'm kind of a sneak eater. When Jan's not around, I'll go, okay, well, nobody to tell me I shouldn't do that except my own conscience. So as my conscience becomes alert and aware, I told these guys, Jan, it was so funny when you're not around, I actually feel like, okay, now's the opportunity. My little trauma as an 8-year-old is when my dad says, no more junk food in the house. And I said to my mom, I'm hungry for some junk. I have any cookies, please? And she says, yeah, in the pantry, but don't, hurry up and eat it. Don't let your father know he's going to be home. Don't let your father know. We'll both be in trouble. So there's kind of my original sin, is the sneaky little rat that wants to forage for stuff. So this is the reoccurring kind of the thief trying to return to the scene of the crime. The reoccurring thing in my life is sneaky. So I look at this and when you left, you went to the store the other day and I thought, well, opportunity. The cabinet's right over there. The junk food, I could hear this going on in my head. The junk food is in there. Go ahead, have some. What happened is I said, who are you? Who is that that's giving me permission to be naughty? Who is that is returning to the scene of the crime? So the little innocent Alan that was 8 is now 62. And so at first I looked at the cabinet and I said, yeah. And then I went, no, who are you? I actually caught it trying to have its way with my unconscious mind, my unconscious self. And I said, no, I'm going to have some berries, because berries is one thing you can have on this type of diet. So I went over and I got some of these organic blueberries, a little handful, and I ate. And it was like nice. I was like, okay. And I said, I got my eye on you. I know who you are. I know you're there. And so I thought, I am heading towards the understanding of faith. And the true meaning of faith is that God will provide when the heart is ready. God will provide to shine the light on what he wants you to see. When the heart is ready and you want to do it for all the right reasons, not because I want to look better, not because I want to prove anything. I just know that I have been abusive to my body, and losing my gallbladder a couple of years ago was kind of the final straw for me. I just thought, you know what? What else do we have to endure in our lives? What kind of horrors do we have to do? I talked to a guy the other day and he was telling me about his friend who had to have his feet cut off. And then of course, all the people that, oh, my friend just died. This morning. He says, yeah, one of my buddies just died. I was talking to a lady that worked for my dad many, many years ago in California. Something said, you need to call Dolores. If you guys know who Dolores Allman is, I love her. She's so sweet. She's like part of my family. And I called her out of the blue, and she's 80 years old. And I said, everything going okay, Dolores? She says, Alan Masters, well, what are you doing? She's living in Georgia. And she told me that her daughter died. She says, I gave birth to 5 children, and I have 2 left. And I said, well, what did she pass of? She says, well, she had diabetes. And the problem is when I hear that somebody dies at 55 of diabetes, they didn't want to change their life. They didn't want to change their lifestyle. So it took them to their early grave. And so I invited Dolores to stay with us, Jan, just so you know. But I don't want to be that person that looks back in another few years and think, I wish I would have changed my lifestyle. I'm changing my lifestyle. I'm being proactive. And I'm doing it because I have a job to do. I can't be of use to God if I'm broken, if my body is so broken. My truck is no good to me if it's broken. I can't tow a trailer with it. I can't haul things. I can't get to where I'm supposed to go. God gave me this truck. I better do some maintenance on it and take good care of it. This truck called Alan. I've got a job to do. I got some weight to carry, and I got to make sure that I've done the proper maintenance on my own self. So, but what's coming out of all of this is a new understanding of having faith, and I don't know how to say it any better than that. Faith to me now is like the breath that I breathe when I go through my life. I say, God, and here's my form of faith. You show me, please, what I need to do. I will just move forward, and you put it in front of me and I'll deal with it. There's something about that. It's like counterintuitive to planning. Now, there's nothing wrong with planning. If you're building a house, you have to have a set of plans. But as you go through your life each and every day, things are going to happen. These things that happen to you, I was explaining this to a guy yesterday. These adversities, we'll call them, that are going to happen to you. This is a bad way of saying it, but if you could gamify it, like people that go skiing know that there's the Black Diamond Run, which the degree of difficulty is much more difficult to ski down a Black Diamond Run because it's steeper and there's things in the way and trees and moguls and all kinds of stuff that you could run into and get hurt. So the degree of difficulty of the adversity that's coming to you, when I say gamify it, is instead of looking at it like, oh, dang it, this happened, say, opportunity to rise above getting angry, rise above being frustrated, rise above and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? Now, for me, and I may have said this before and I apologize if I have, when my mom and dad passed away, the first time I recognized that I had to not be angry, upset, disturbed. That was the first time in my life where I actually looked at that and said, okay, now it is on me. Now I have to go directly to God. So the question I have for you folks is, has that happened to you yet? Have you had your aha moment, your moment of truth, where you stop going to your best friend that is the Bible answer man, or going to, whoever it is in your life that has always answered all your questions, and literally take a step back and say, all right, God, I need your help. I don't know. And not be angry about it. Just be willing to not know and say, I'm going to live as honestly as I'm capable of in every moment of every part of every day, and I'm going to wait for you to give me the answer. Patient endurance. In other words, I'm going to endure this life with patience, and I'm going to seek you to show me the answers, to put the answers in me, or to guide my hand as I reach out into the world. You know what they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And the other one that's like that is, you don't begin your journey until you've untied from the dock and push away, if you were in a boat. So the untying for the dock for me was when my dad passed away. And I knew he was going to pass away, and he did the night that I had my last discussion with him. And all I can tell you is that my life began that day. Before that, I was a puppy with a bunch of other puppies in a little enclosure. But it's like Kwai Chang Caine, if you remember Kung Fu, and the blind teacher, the Buddhist temple, the guy with the white eyes, and he held a pebble in his hand and he said, when you can snatch the pebble from my hand, it'll be time for you to go. And he would always try to snatch the pebble from a blind man's hand. And one day he did. So the question is, has that happened for you? It's happened for me, and I take great joy in putting my faith in God now instead of just my dad. I love my dad, and he was a wonderful teacher and father. But all of a sudden, I realized the handoff, when he passed on, the handoff was directly to the hand of God. I commend my son to you, Lord, is probably, things that he was thinking, my children and congregation. But we have to learn how to have faith in our Creator in our lives, in every step of our day. And if we can do that, it changes life. It changes where you go, what you do. I'll give you an example. On the way here, I had a cup of coffee this morning. I have a nice coffee machine. I like to have just 1 cup a day. On the way here, across the street, there's a little coffee shop. Something said, "Oh, go get a cup of coffee. That coffee's delicious. Go get a cup of coffee." And I pulled into the driveway here, and a few of you folks were here, and I thought, nope, not gonna. But the devil knows your sin, and he knows your name, but he chooses to call you by your sin. God knows your sin, but he calls you by your name. And the consciousness of life is what we need to seek, is to be conscious and have clarity of thought. And that's what that meditation helps with. But also being faithful and not having fear and doubt. When I see fear and doubt, I go, I see you. I see you. I don't know what to think about it. I see you. Have you ever had that to where you see fear? You see doubt, of course. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? Who's going to be president? All these things, right? We're watching all this right now. The devil was literally on television the other night. And you guys probably all saw it. Red background. And the devil was on television telling us how evil the good guy is, in essence. And it's like, wow, boy. But when I see what I see, I just see it and say, I know who you are. I don't need to analyze it. I don't need to try and come up with words to tell you guys or any of my friends or my wife or anybody, because sometimes there's just no words. I know what I know. Bad guy. And when I see it and I say, I see you. Now, it's funny because in the movie Avatar, the way they told each other they loved each other was they wouldn't say, I love you. They would look each other right in the eye and say, I see you. Okay, that is love, isn't it? If you are looking at somebody and you say, I see you, because I see into you, right? Into you I see an intimacy. Into me you see is intimacy, right? We're supposed to be intimate with our Creator. Now, if you have enough love to not hate evil, but see it for what it is, that's death to that dark thing, because that is the light of God shining through you onto a shadow that disappears. So, for us to be able to possess something called love, we have to have it in our heart. And you don't actually possess it because you give it away, but to have that love in your heart towards fellow human beings is to not judge, but even to see somebody that has wickedness in them, which most people do, more and more and more wickedness, but to be able to deal with them like your best friend. And I'll give you an example. I have a friend whose best friend owes him $52,000, and he wants to see him dead. It's been 13 years, he was telling me this. He says, I could have him killed. He says, that SOB, that, this, that, and the other. And I said, wasn't he your best friend? He says, was. And I was like, wow, you're harboring a lot of hate. He says, well, you know what? SOB, this, that, and the other, and F-bomb, this, that, and the other. And all this came out, and I thought, well, that's what happens when you give a home to hate. He was a volcano, and right below the surface, right under his Adam's apple, was molten lava hate. And I said, let me ask you something. Why don't you, now that 13 years has gone by, why don't you go to him and say, you know what? It's been a long time. You've recovered. You're in a better position. Maybe you can start making payments to me. We were friends, and it's just the right thing to do to pay me back. And you're now successful. And I said, we've all made mistakes in our lives. Have you not made a mistake? And at one time, actually, he had stolen from me, and I forgave him, and he paid me back. And, it's like we've all made mistakes in our lives. He was without sin cast the first stone, right? And so I'm saying all these things to him, and he says, and then back to the F-bomb and this, that, and the other. And then, and I said, no. I said, listen, I said, if you go to him and say, it's time. You need to make me some sort of a payment each month. I said, if you go to him like he's your best friend instead of somebody you want to see dead, you might get your money back. And guess what? You might get your friendship back, and you might exorcise that dark demon inside of you that is eating you alive. That hate is eating you alive. It's not going to hurt him. He's on his way with his new life. It's eating you alive. So I said, matter of fact, I'll tell you what. I said, how about if I mediate this for you? How about if I go with you to him? Or if I go to him by myself? It would be uncomfortable, but I'm happy to do it. I said, because I love you. I said, and if you love him, then maybe you'll let go of the hate enough to be able to let him pay you back, because I'll bet he would. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Now, I'm not saying he can't and won't, but we let this dark thing inside of us, and it grows and grows and grows, and then it starts working in the subconscious. It starts working in the background, like I'm buying all these big pieces of equipment, like mining equipment, backhoes, digging away at your soul, mining, literally consuming you from the inside out. That's where cancers come from, is hatred and resentment and contempt and harboring judgments. And it turns into something that eats you alive and takes you. You become blind to it, absolutely. And the thing is that we all have something that we carry with us. We carry a resentment towards our parents. We carry doubt and fear, which can be anything then. And that doubt and fear is the essence of all these little things, because it doesn't want you to wake up. Doubt, then fear, and then you go directly for the drug of choice: food, drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, pleasure, whatever it is. So what is the underpinnings? What is the core of why we do these silly things we do in our life? Unfinished business. Unfinished forgiveness, repentance, unfinished business. And, as the fire marshal will tell you that, when you put out a fire, you put water on it, if there's still burning embers down underneath all the coals, it'll fire up again. That's what forest fires come from. A lot of times is people think they put out the fire, but they only put the flames out, but the burning embers, and they may be buried deep. And within us is all kinds of unfinished business for my mom, my dad, the grandma that was cruel and mean. You literally got to pull it out, put it on the table and say, all right, I see you. I see you. You've been living inside of me for a long time. I'm going to be watching you. I'm giving you notice. Because what happens is when something happens, that little dark thing that's been living in you, that's made a home in you, that's what comes up. That's the volcanic hate that comes out when you deal with your children, the store clerk, the used car salesman, the idiot in the car in front of you that won't let you pass, whatever it is. And when you see that, you better say, I see you, because it isn't you. It's what you've allowed to make a home in you. How many of us have property that have, let's just say, snails, right? Chuck's the snail hunter. And Roger has property. You've got gophers. I'll bet they make a mess of your property, right? Whatever it is. Ants. We have ants right now in our kitchen. And I'm there with my phone and my flashlight on my phone. Where are those coming from? We all have something that we have that has made a home on our property. And we'd like to get rid of it. And if you really want to be diligent about it, you can, right? Well, you got to be diligent about your own life. What has made a home in you? What is your gopher, your snail, your ant? whatever is spiders, whatever the heck it is that has made a home in your property, in God's property, which is you, you've got to be diligent. But what's going to come up? Doubt and fear every time. Doubt, oh, it's just stupid what they're talking about. Well, could be, I guess, until one day you wake up and go, 10 years ago, that guy was right. 10 years ago, Roy Masters was right. 50 years ago, Roy Masters was right. How long do we wait? I'm tired of waiting. I'm looking at it going, you know what? I can be deceptive with Jan. She's my wife. Sleeps in the same bed with me in my house every day. What good does that do me? Doesn't do me any good. Doesn't build my relationship with her any better. Doesn't make things better for us as husband and wife. I can deceive her all I want. She would never know. I'm so good at it. And I'm even better at deceiving myself. Because I will go, squirrel, if you know that cartoon. Every time the dog saw a squirrel, no matter what it was doing, it was squirrel. And for me, it's, whatever it is. New tractors can never get enough. New cars can never get enough. New shirts, new shoes, whatever your thing is. Eating too much. I don't want to live a life deceiving my own self, because at the end of the day, I have killed myself. I don't want to kill myself. I don't want to commit murder on my own soul. That's what deception is. That's what faithlessness is. That's what fear and doubt is. Murder of the soul that God gave you to cherish and love, that could be a Jesus. Jesus left here saying that you can do everything I can do and more. How is that possible? Well, if he said it, it's got to be possible. It's just nobody's done it yet. If it's possible, well, I wouldn't mind just getting to Jesus' level. Don't even worry about going past the teacher. Just get somewhere near it, be one of his apostles, whatever. But if it's possible, I'd like to try for it. I'd like to go for it. I've spent the last 61 3/4 years trying the other guy's way, and it's brought nothing but suffering. No joy, no happiness. And thank God that he forgives me for every transgression. Thank you, God. And thank you, Jesus. Because, wow, this is where doubt and fear comes in. They won't forgive me. I've been so wretched. Doubt and fear. That's the devil's biggest tool, doubt and fear. If he can get you to doubt yourself, he can take you to hell. And you know who murders you? You know who takes you out? Yourself. Your own foolishness, pride, ego, will. Faith moves us differently than anything in the world. It moves us through the time, space, earth, spirit continuum, because it's this little slice of 100 years of life that we may get is literally a grain of sand on the beach of the world. But when you have faith, time kind of stands still, because at some point, none of the things that are involved in time matter, because God says, I'll take care of it. Follow me. Come with me. I've got a job for you to do. But I didn't do this. It's okay. Remember what even Jesus said to the man? He says, come with us. Follow me. Well, my father died. I have to bury my father. Let the dead bury the dead. Come with us. We'll take care of whatever it is. Somebody will bury your father. My dad always said, my friend came up to visit. He says, I want to go pay my respects and visit your dad's grave. And I said, my dad said, don't come to my grave. I'm not there. Right? We are so caught up in the worldly and the visual and the taste and all the worldly things that we cannot move to the next level, because we are tied to the docks of life. And so we're tied to that marina, and we never get to venture into the next phase of this journey, you might say. But I feel free now because I've let go. I don't have an investment anymore in what I used to. I put my treasures in heaven. So all the things that I have now better have a purpose to make this world a better place, to make God's will come true on earth as it is in heaven. And so what I used to have a love affair with. I would fall in love with a car. I don't do that anymore. I look at that car and go, are you feeding my ego or are you feeding my Lord? And even I have a little Jeep right now. And I think to myself, boy, I really enjoy this thing because it pulls a trailer, it's a pickup truck, it's a diesel, it gets good fuel economy. And I go, well, I got to get around somehow. So I like the economics of it. I like the fact that it works well. I like the fact that it's a truck. And I feel like if Jesus was going to buy a vehicle, he'd buy a truck with a lumber rack because he was a carpenter. But I can tell you, I'm finally seeing how my dad was able to do what he did in life because he knew. This is the faith part of faith, fear, and doubt. He knew that God was going to fulfill whatever he was supposed to do. He didn't know what it was, but he knew a direction to go, and God will fill in the blank. I don't know what I'm supposed to do each and every day, but God's going to fill in the blanks as long as I move towards him. And as long as I move towards the light, guess what? The closer to the light I get, the less shadows. Now, there's one big shadow, which is the shadow of my body, and there's a shadow behind me. And I can tell you that all of my dark sides are right now, and when you get behind a big truck going down the freeway, and you're in the slipstream, and all the things from all of my life, the temptations and all of the little things, they're following in the slipstream, in staying in the shadow of my body because I'm getting closer to the light as a man. But when this body of this man finally goes back to the earth, there'll be no shadow. The spirit will move forward like my dad's did. He says, don't visit me at the graveyard. I'm not there. I drove by it the other day and I'm like, oh, my mom and dad's in there. No. And I said, no, they aren't. Just some bones and what have you.
As you let the light in, the shadows disappear. You don't have to die for them to go away.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm just saying, I know that there is a point where you're kind of like they say purification by fire, where you're purified. Now, is it while we're here? I think Jesus was that way. So it can be while we're here on this earth. But I know that, there's less shadows. I can look to the left and look to the right in my life and kind of spiritually speaking. And there's not a lot of things that tempt me anymore. Just not. They try, but I say, I see you. And it's like looking with almost like light. It fades away. And I'm so appreciative of this new life that I've been given and this new consciousness. I still wonder about, life and death and all that. I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die to be courageous in whatever I have to do. I'm not afraid to die in that act, whatever that act is. God calls me to do something. I'm going straight ahead without doubt and fear. Not even wondering. When you have the knowing in your heart, you move forward on that knowing, and it's like a beam of light. It's like walking on a beam of light. It draws you forward like beam me up, Scotty. I have wonder. There's a difference. There's doubt and wonder. I know I don't know, and I wonder what's next. But I don't doubt that God will fulfill his promise. Doubt and fear try to make me doubt. Because, see, it's a battle of good and evil going on in this world for my soul and for your soul. So since we are kind of a party to this battle that's going on, but it's what we possess. God gave us a soul that the devil wants. So he's trying his best to make us turn from God, turn from faith, turn from being okay with not knowing because I give myself fully to God. I give myself fully, consciously to God to have me do what he wants. And then, of course, the devil, with his little hooks in me all over, little treble hooks, all tries to pull on all these little strings. And every time he tries and I see it, it breaks that string. One less string tying me to the earth like Gulliver's Travels, like Gulliver. And so I feel free. I feel very free, very light, very appreciative. But it makes me think of my dad, how he was able to live and do and say what he said to all those people on TV and in the elevator going up or down, in the grocery store, to giant audiences. You become a conduit of your Creator. And then the job is how to communicate what is put in your heart into words that people can understand. And this is, I believe, why Jesus used parables. When I read what Jesus said, isn't it just beautiful and simple? It's always just beautiful and simple. And then when I read scholarly things, I'm like, this is not beautiful and it's not simple. It's just not. We saw something the other day on TV, Janet, that you wanted me to watch, and that guy made a comment, and you go, see?
The guy was mentioning something that I think your dad has even said before, that the more educated a person is, the more easily they are pulled into these mass formation hypnosis things. And so that's when I said, see, for you.
See, you being an idiot's worked out for you. I got that going for me on my deathbed. But, and I don't care. I'm okay with not being the smartest guy in the world. It doesn't matter. I'm okay with not being smart at all because I don't know. I don't want it to be of my smart. I want God to show me what I need to do and put His will in me so that I can work His will, not my will. I remember parts of my life where I was on a stage and thinking to myself, oh, the doubt and the fear. Oh, Chuck, you used to teach a speaking class. People, you probably saw it 1,000 times. The doubt and the fear, I can't do this. I can't even speak to an audience. The fear people have of speaking publicly is amazing. To me, that is always the level of faithlessness that they have, because they're trying to remember, they're trying to memorize this perfect thing, and it's just rote information regurgitated to sound good. And what I've learned, and people say to me, how do you do it? How do you do all these years I've been talking and doing things, and how do you do it? I said, you know what? I just admit, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to have a theme. If the theme is business, I'm going to talk about what I've learned through my mistakes in business and how I've bettered myself through making those mistakes and learning from my mistakes. As a matter of fact, I talked to a guy at 3 o'clock this morning who was in Hawaii, who is actually Mick Fleetwood's manager. Manages some of his business affairs from Fleetwood Mac. And he responded to something I sent him like 6 months ago. And for some reason, he must have been up, it's what time is it in Hawaii? It's 3 hours difference or whatever, midnight. And he says, hey there, I'm still here. And I said, well, someday we're going to have to talk about business on my show, and because you've done this amazing business. He goes, yeah, ha, 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 only twice through bankruptcy. But he's laughing about it, and he said something about perfected by learning from my mistakes or something like this. And I thought, well, you could say that we are all mostly morally bankrupt. We've made mistakes, and maybe not now in your life, but in our lives we've gone through bankruptcy, moral bankruptcy, spiritual bankruptcy, right? Well, you either better laugh about it and say, okay, well, I've made all those mistakes, and I was a real dummy, but I'm not going to be anymore. I'm not going to make those mistakes anymore. I'm going to see them as they're coming. I'm going to say, I see you, and I'm not going to fall prey to overspending, to not keeping an eye on how much money's in the bank or whatever it is in business. But in life, it's being tempted for a man by a woman. I told you guys the story of the stripper that tried to tempt me. It was hilarious. To me, she had cleavage hanging out all over the place, and she was trying her best to tempt me. And I said, you better not stand there. You might get killed. Because this big piece of machinery is coming along. And she was like trying to do her little jiggle dance, You better not stand there. You might get killed. And something inside of me said, that's really funny. Because I'm just not even tempted by it. It's like, take your jiggles over there. Otherwise, you might get squished. So as you mature in life and as you learn by your mistakes, you don't have to make them anymore. Or you can keep falling prey to your mistakes until you one day have that aha moment, that moment of truth where you say, enough. I give myself to you, Lord. Please help me. Give me understanding. Give me wisdom. Well, my brother Michael sent me this thing where he says, I ask God for courage. And then it shows this lion jumping off of a thing to attack a guy. And he says, and he gave me difficult obstacles to overcome. I ask God to give me strength, and there's another situation to overcome. I ask God to give me love. And he says, and he gave me people that needed to be loved, to learn how to love them. Isn't that life is all about? Sometimes going bankrupt and recovering because you've learned from your mistakes, repenting of those mistakes and sins. Remember, a sin in the archery world is to miss the mark. You miss the bullseye. Try it again. The archer doesn't give up just because he missed the bullseye the first time. Bankruptcy, one marriage, two marriages, or whatever it is. So, some people that have had abortions, I always think to myself, oh, the pain it must be. But you know what? It's a mistake. We made a bad choice. God forgives us for all these things because the devil wants you to think you cannot be forgiven. Doubt and fear will keep you from saying, Lord, I repent of my sins. I see that I made a mistake and I admit it and I'm sorry. These are the things that we need to do, is to learn how to be sorry for the mistakes no matter what they are. Murderers in prison. Murderers have killed people. They find this thing and they go, oh my gosh, I've made a mistake. I repent. I am sorry. Now, the rest of their life, they are going to have that darkness that's going to try to pull them back down. But that's why faith, fear, and doubt, they kind of go together. Because if you have faith, fear and doubt are going to follow you for all the days of your life. They'll follow you. It's like Mrs. Jiggles tried to tempt me. And I'd look at her and just say, I see you. Move out of the way. You're about to lose your life. I didn't have to hate her. I actually wanted to correct her. And I'm waiting to see her again because I'm going to say to her, you know what? Let me have a talk with you. I actually saw her, which is funny. I saw her driving by and she goes, hey, it's me.
When you were back at that property.
I went back to the property to get the thing and she wasn't there to get this piece of equipment I bought, but she drove by and she waved, and I thought to myself, I'll see her. I will have some time in my life where I will see her and I'll say, I really wanted to talk to you about your life. But life to me is so interesting now. Every time something comes at me, it's like instead of having the devil in it, the devil may be in it, and me being afraid of it, whatever it is, whatever adversity it is, I see now that it's the test, we'll call it. Like when the teacher comes along and he's handing out the test for the day. Do you hate the teacher or do you hate the test? Right? My teacher, when he gave me the test, I was like, oh, I hate these tests. Oh, I hate them. Right? I never hated my teacher because I kind of always thought, my teacher, they're just doing their job. But now I look at it as, that test actually may be designed to make me smarter, better person. So maybe the test actually has some God in it. So I flip it around a little bit and say, how can I find God in what's going on in my life today? Is God saying, well, let's see how Alan deals with this. And is God pleased with how I dealt with the situation? Or does he go, well, maybe there's next time. Because God is all patience, all kindness, all love. The devil gets a little stronger when I don't do the right thing. But I realize that as I move through my life, seeking first the kingdom of heaven and God's will, and being thankful for the Savior's lessons, because the Savior brought us all these amazing lessons that we can draw on to move forward, that the world becomes a better place around me. That's how it's happening in my life. The world around me is becoming a better place. And it may only be in my nuclear, tiny little life, people around me, the people that I've been around for 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years. If I am helping in some fashion to bring them closer to God, then that pleases me because I know that it pleases my Father in heaven. So my one friend that I have that has this hatred towards his ex-friend, I know I have all the faith that because he loves me, he won't want to disappoint me. And he'll come to me and ask me to help him deal with our friend of past to get his money back. Because he loves me. He doesn't know about God and all that stuff. He loves what's in me. If I love what's in my dad, then I don't want to disappoint my dad. And if I love what's in my dad, I love the Creator. And I don't want to disappoint the Creator. So anymore in my life, I find that I don't want to disappoint my Creator because he has given me so much joy in such a short amount of time that it erases all of the suffering of my life. One drop of joy would erase the whole ocean of pain and suffering of a lifetime. Because the majority of the pain and suffering that we have, that we carry with us, just evaporates when true joy, when true love comes into you. It evaporates. It just dissipates. It's gone. It's like steam. Where'd it go? It's gone. And all I can say is that I am so thankful that I'm finding that for my family's sake, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, because then I can help through the walk that I'm walking in my life to affect them, not me teaching them, but the love in me being the teacher, as I said last week. And my son-in-law said to somebody 2 or 3 days ago, this person says, I just love you, yada, 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 giving me this nice compliment. And he says, you should have met him a couple of years ago. You're meeting the best version of Alan. Because he's known me for like 15 years now. But it's really funny because what I recognized, even though it was a bit of a slam, backhanded compliment, he recognizes it in me. And I see him becoming a better young man and being a better father to his little son, which is my grandson and daughter. I can see God working through me. I can see it. I don't want to be proud about it. I don't want to be weird about it, but I can see it in the life that is happening called Alan. I can see it in my life, in my relationship with this woman sitting next to me, with you folks, with people I don't know, with everything it seems to be. I used to say, everything my dad touches turns to gold. He'd buy some old building in L.A. next to the Helms Bakery that went out of business. I remember 1975, the Helms Bakery was a big bakery in the weird part of town, went out of business, and their business office was for sale. And I remember my dad taking us all there. I was 15, 1975. And he says, I'm going to buy this office. It's a very good deal, and we're going to turn it into our new business office. And I remember going, what are you doing? This place is the big giant industrial bakery next door. I was thinking as a kid, like, this isn't some glorious church building, right? This isn't some glorious thing, because you know how kids are like all about the ego. Oh, well, he paid $50,000 for it. And in 1975, that was, probably a lot of money. But the next year, somebody came along that wanted it and said, well, I'll give you $100,000. He says, nope, I need $200,000 if I'm going to sell it and move on. And then, oh, that's too much money. And the next year after that, they came by and they said, all right, well, we'll give you $150,000. No, I need $200,000. So this went on for 20 years. Every year, my dad would raise it, another 50 or 100,000 or whatever. And so 15 years went by. He sold it for $1,050,000. He paid $50,000. And then I remember in 1980 is when we bought Tall Timber Ranch in 79. And I remember going, oh my gosh, he's buying a ranch in Oregon. What's he doing? This is my whole life wondering, what is my dad doing? But everything he touched turned to gold in his life. It made no sense to me, the analytical, egocentric mind of a young person. It made no sense. But as I look back now, I go, he was following the voice that spoke into his soul that said, go this way, young man. So now it's like trying to analyze what somebody else does in their life is kind of silly. But the reality is I don't have to analyze anything anymore because I don't even have to make a decision. I just move toward the direction and God will show me what I need to do, and almost like shine a light, like there's a spotlight from above and says, this is what needs to be done, without words. This is what needs to be done. And I just move toward it, and it starts to happen. And it's an effortless life, you guys. It's effortless. Then when my ego gets involved, it becomes full of effort again. And I have to look at it and say, I see where I made the wrong turn. I made the ego choice. It's free. I just like letting go of a bird. It flies away from me. I let go of that ego, pride, will, whatever it is. I'll just let go of it. Because I'm the one holding on to the ego and the pride, the will, the anger, the hatred, resentment, whatever it is. You hold on to it. Got to let go. When you let go and let God, it flies away from you. And then you're free. You're free. Otherwise, you have to keep feeding it. And it's hungry. That little thing inside us is hungry. So I started out talking about faith, doubt, and fear. And the reason why is because I've seen so much doubt and fear lately. To bring this to kind of a crescendo of an end. So much doubt and fear in all of us. And it was in me too. And if we don't recognize it and stop making excuses for it, then you're just going to continue on life with it, slowly but surely scooping out your insides so it has more room for it. If you don't know that God has got the reins and you just have to stop fighting him, you got to let go of that pride, let go of that will. And you know, it's scary. Fear. It's scary. It's scary. When you are so tied to our things, our stuff, when we're tied to it. My friend over here says to me today, I see that, I looked around at all my things. You could see yourself in those things. That's my fortune. That's what I've amassed in my life. But all of a sudden something came over him and it said to him, that's not you. Your fortune is within. Your fortune is your soul. And if you've protected your soul and you've nurtured your soul, then you are value. It's what's in your heart, he says. You are value, not your stuff. It just rusts and breaks down and goes back to the earth. But we are so tied to our things that we cannot let go. I was thinking about some stuff I had, and I looked at it, and I said, if that was gone, would I be any less a man? If that stuff was gone? If I showed up and somebody had stole my stuff, would I be any less a man? In my eyes, I kind of saw it blink, disappear, and it was gone. And then I shook my head, and there it was again. I was like, oh, good, I'm glad it didn't get stolen. But while for a moment there, I thought, no, I'm right now a shepherd of these things. They're not mine, but I don't want to hoard them to myself. I want to make use of these things, whatever these things are, whether it be money, whether it be equipment, whether it be land, whether it be the ability to communicate to people. I am supposed to be the shepherd of what God puts in my life. And if I'm doing a good job, he will make abundance. He will create abundance. It's like I bought these cows and now there's more cows. And somebody had a field that they said, you can use my field to feed your cows. And I'm like, cool, free food. Then another friend of mine bought a ranch, and it's a hay ranch. And he says, hey, I got 5,000 bales of hay. How about I sell you some hay, $3 a bale? $3 a bale. I'm like, I'll take 1,000 bales. No, make it 1,500. So now I put them in the barn out at Tall Timber Ranch, and I've got hay in case the winter comes and there's nothing to feed the cow. Well, I have stuff to feed the cows, and the cows will feed us. So I'm watching the good Lord above put abundance in my life. And boy, you got to watch that pride, because the devil has all these tools he can use to make you, just like I was talking about making the steak. I'm the best chef in the world today. The pride, he tries to get in. He got into Eve and Adam in the Garden of Eden through pride. You can also be a god. That's what God doesn't want you to know. That's why he says, don't eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But what happens is, if we just stay aware, as in the military they say, eyes up, The enemy is close. Eyes up. When the guy said to me that the first time, he sent me a note. He says, eyes up. And I said, what does that mean? I could kind of tell. I mean, I look up. I go, what are you talking about? He says, in the military, when danger is around and it's sneaking around, all you have to do is say eyes up. That way you're not giving away anything of what you know. Like, over next to the tree over there. You don't even say it. You just say eyes up. And then you're supposed to scan the horizon and find it for yourself. Eyes up, because evil is everywhere. And if you go through life being conscious, that is eyes up, then you will not be taken out by your own pride, ego, will, any of those things, that the tools of the devil that is dwelling within.
As you become more aware, as you get closer to God, you will see little tiny slivers of this will come into your life. All of a sudden you'll see, instead of the anger in the person, you'll see behind the anger and what's there. And it's that evil shadow or that. And it takes away your judgment of the person and frees you of that blindness that keeps you inside your own person, judging yourself and eating yourself up with hatred of others, that blinds you and just keeps you trapped inside the shell. And the world goes on around you and you just don't see it. You're caught up in this anger and hatred.
That's that movie, The Matrix. It was so interesting how there was kind of two worlds. My dad wrote the book about the parallel universe. And in the movie The Matrix, there was the world of the asleep, or the hypnotic world above. And they were the conscious of the evil that was out there, and conscious of how evil worked, kind of the foundational understanding of human nature, right? Foundation of human understanding. And as we start to wake up to the evil that's out there and simplify, I mean, literally, my dad's whole theory is the KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid, right? That's what KISS means. When you see somebody wearing a hat that says KISS, it means keep it simple, stupid. Because be still and know that I am God is to not judge, not try and analyze, but give it to God to show you. Because God will put the understanding in your heart. It's like when I said that I was with all those folks trying to move that piece of equipment, and it was prostitutes and heroin addicts, drug addicts, and homeless people. I didn't really see that. I could see the squalor, but I could see all these little kids like in The Lord of the Flies. They were, dirty and frumpy, and the one woman came out that had the two adult kids, and the one kid was a heroin addict, and now, since then, I found out he was also a pedophile, and they let him, with all this new stuff with the politics, they let him out. He had a 50-year sentence. They let him out after, 10 years or something. I mean, this world is really sick. They're letting all these sick people out. But when that guy was around me, he didn't say a word. He didn't say a word. He just helped. He just helped, and all these people were working harmoniously together, and I thought, I don't see their sin. I see that they have sinned, but what I see is the innocence in them that was unfortunately robbed initially by their parents, and then later on by themselves. It's murder, self-murder. When you don't wake up, when God clicks the light on, that moment of truth, and you shun your Creator and say, nope, you'll never forgive me for what I've done, fear and doubt. And you have a moment of truth, and God gives all these people moment of truth all the time. Maybe they're laying in bed. Maybe they've taken so many drugs that they're drugged out, but maybe they're laying in bed going, I got to get out of here. This is the wrong place. Haven't you ever been somewhere where you go, I got to get out of here? Jan and I went to a party. A friend of mine invited us to his party. We talked about this about a month ago. His birthday party, and I said, well, let's go. I haven't seen this guy in a long time. Both of us, we knew we had to get out of there. Nasty music playing and people running around doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but there was children there too. There was evil within, like when Moses went up to get the tablets and they all started worshiping idols and what have you. It felt like that, and we knew we got to get out of here. So we finally said, you know what? Time for us to go. Didn't hate those people. Didn't hate my friend. Felt a little bit of sadness for them. felt a little bit of sadness because, you know better. You know better. We all know better. But when are we going to finally make the commitment? That's the question.
Actually, I would say they mostly don't know better. Your dad, I just thought about this somewhere in my sleep, was really exempling a life of faith. And you don't see many people like that in the world that are really living that faith. And it's not even everything he said. It was living by faith. He showed all of us how to do that.
When I say we know better, what I mean by that is we know when we're doing wrong. We inherently know when we're doing wrong. And we know better when we're living a wrong life. We do know when we're doing wrong. We don't always know what to do, what is right, but we know that we're doing wrong and we got to get out of there. Whatever that get out of there means to whoever's listening, you know when you're doing something wrong, you know when your life is not right, and I got to move towards the light. If that's the better way of putting it, we need to move towards the light. And stopping to make excuses, we all make so many excuses for what we do. It allows it to continue living in us. I don't want to make excuses anymore. I just don't. I just want to admit when I've done something wrong. That moves me closer. When you admit you've done something wrong without making an excuse, even though it's right there, it's bubbling up in your throat to make an excuse, you say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It's like, oh, you just threw water on a fire. So now it's going to stay, under there smoldering. But every time you do that, it's like another cup of water on the fire. And eventually that fire goes out. But you don't know better what to do, but you know better when you're doing wrong that you shouldn't ought to be doing it. That's called a conscience. If you're listening to this right now, if you're here or listening, your conscience is alive. And that's what I mean when I say we know better.
I was mostly referring to these people at the party because it just reminds me of when I was growing up, just how nobody really knew anything. They were just doing what culture presented. And every once in a while, me and the people in here, you find that voice out there that confirms for you and shows you how to get on track.
Well, I think if you're tired, because if you're sick and tired, that means you're human, because we're all tired and mostly we're sick, then it's time to stop making excuses and start being honest and start moving towards the light. And actually, as much as doubt and fear tells you it's going to be painful, it's wonderful. Because I lived in doubt and fear also most of my life, thinking I was never going to be good enough. How could I be good enough? And doesn't everybody else kind of feel that way? How can I be good enough with all the dumb things I've done? And I was Roy Master's son. After a while, I thought, well, I'm just destined to live a meager life. But that's not what God wants for you. We can't imagine what God wants for us because, we have the brain of a mouse. All I can say is that it's just time to stop making excuses. Stop doubting and fearing the unknown, which is all a lie. The future is in front of you. The past is behind you. That's why the car has a big windshield and a tiny little rearview mirror. You're supposed to keep an eye on what's behind you, but what's in front of you is where you're going. Stop making excuses. Start living a more thoughtful life, eyes up. Be conscious. And you never know what God has in store for your life. Mine is becoming beautiful, and I'm grateful.
I was just curious about something you said, that we always know when we're doing wrong. And I found that to be true many times, but there have been other times where that wasn't necessarily the case, especially in the realm of relationships, forbidden relationships that you shouldn't be entering into. I was just thinking about all the times in my life where, something seemed like it was going to be okay. It's almost like the flesh starts talking to me. And it's not till I have a little separation of maybe a day or two from maybe the lady I'm involved with or whatever that I realize, oh man, something's really wrong here. And I was just thinking of a conversation your father had with a gentleman years ago. He called up, they were talking about sex before marriage. And he says, Roy, he says, I don't see anything wrong with sex before marriage. Roy says, you don't see anything wrong with it. He says, no, not at all. 2 consenting adults or something like that. And Roy said, you know what? You're still under the influence. In other words, give yourself some separation from that sin, and you will start to feel that anxiety. You will begin to recognize that you've crossed a boundary that isn't good for you. At least that's been my experience. And I was thinking about other times where, I had done something. I think, isn't that part of the nature of the fallen state, is you don't see clearly what's going on? Even at this stage of my life, I'm still vulnerable to, hate to be too transparent here, but I haven't been in a relationship for a while, but there's still boundaries that sometimes I cross and I don't always see them in the moment. And then later I realize, wow, I didn't see what I was getting involved with. Now, there may have been a time in my life where I crossed a boundary where it was clear that it was wrong, and maybe that caused a certain amount of blindness in the future. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there because it seemed like it applied to what you were saying.
The trouble is that all decisions have a destination. We don't see that destination because when we're caught up in a relationship or something like that. But that's it. There is an outcome for those decisions that we make.
So coming back for a moment to the food connection, sugar is a very interesting drug. It's delicious, but it is a drug, and it makes you forget yourself while you're eating it. And if you forget yourself while you're eating it, who else are you forgetting? You're forgetting Christ. And what happens is when we're in a relationship, believe it or not, because we're just kind of big petri dishes of chemical, massive, blubbering fat, as my dad would say, we get into a relationship and we all of a sudden start to become lustful chemicals, in falling in love chemicals. And all this stuff is happening inside of our brain, and we start to focus on the person that we've fallen into love with. And there is almost a chemical reaction that's going on that is making you into a zombie. You are under the influence of this fallen state. It isn't love at all, right? You're under the influence of a fallen state, whether you're indulging in food, fallen state, indulging in this thing we call love in this world, fallen state. And I said something the other day, by the way, that was not, I'm sure, taken correctly, which was that I'm finally loving Jan, probably for the first time in the 40 years we've been together, 36 married. And she says, I don't know that you explained that correctly. I said, well, we fell in love, as all peoples fall in love. We fell in love, we got married, we had kids, we brought the kids up, we did this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden now, in the fallen state man, I did all the things the fallen man does, but now I'm rising to a higher level of what love really is, and now I can really love my wife for the first time. Instead of using the fallen version of love, I can use the higher version of love, which is what love really is. Calmness, kindness, patience, sometimes firmness, but looking at her not as an object, but as another soul. I didn't marry her as her body and her nice hair. I married her soul. And so even the whole thing about sex before marriage, it just seems stupid not to have sex before marriage to a carnal man, right? It's like, what the hell are they talking about? Hell yeah, you're going to have sex before marriage, right? I got to try on them shoes before I buy them. I've heard that. Haven't you guys heard that? Really? Well, did you know those shoes are going to be with you for the rest of your life in one form or another? But as you wake up to what love is, then you look at sex differently. You look at food differently. You look at your brother, your sister, your wife, your mother, your father, your coworker, the bum on the street, the hooker, prostitute, stripper. You look at them all differently. Yeah, he says the falling is falling away from God, and it's correct. You're falling away from God into the arms of your, air quotes, lover, which sadly is, it's kind of like paradise lost, as my dad calls it. And true paradise is once you start to return to what God wants for you and his love, which sees the world through a different lens, through different eyes. I had eyes, but I was blind. I had ears, but I was deaf.
Getting married and having children is obviously part of the human race, continuing, bringing people onto the earth. But if you make it just about sex, it's a whole different story. But if if you want to do what's right in your life and you want the life God has planned for you, then he will show you who you're supposed to be with, like he did for you and I. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater that marriage, relationships, sex, it's all bad. There's a purpose in it, and there's a growth that happens through marriage in it.
Well, as you become conscious and awake, you can throw out the bathwater and keep the baby. And that's really important, because at some point the bathwater does get dirty and it's time to throw it out. But I saw my wife the other day. She was doing some work, and this incredible sense of love and appreciation came over me. And it was joy. It was pure joy that I had at least been obedient early on in my life, so that 40 years later, because we had a nice proper relationship before we got married, and we waited for 4 years. I tried to be obedient because I loved my dad and what he stood for. So I tried to be obedient for my dad. I didn't really so much agree with it. It was like, no, but I love my dad and I love what he stands for, and I know he knows more than me, right? But because of that, it blessed my relationship with my wife. But then she had to have endurance and patient endurance to wait for me to actually get to this stage.
You know, I remember a long time ago, I thought I was going to marry a gal. I'd only been dating her for a couple months. I talked to a lady friend about it, had a little more sense than me. In fact, she used to go to the church here, and she says, "Oh, how long you known this gal for, Dave?" And I said, "Oh, a couple months." She said, "Is she Christian?" I said, I think so. She looked at me surprised. She said, "You think so? Isn't that important to you?" I go, "Well, yeah." And I realized, the bottom line, she was trying to get me to think. I think that's a big part of when it comes to relationships, is getting past the lust factor and just thinking clearly. I mean, I was just thinking about, you described this woman that you encountered with the cleavage and whatnot. I see that a lot, that sort of thing. And there's a part of me that's drawn to that. Another part that says, okay, what's this? Why am I so drawn to this? What does that look like? If I could take this to its ultimate conclusion and have this woman, what is that going to look like in a relationship? Is she going to be a good mother, or somebody I could introduce to my friends and feel okay about? Or a lot of times the answer is no way. So it's almost like I have to use my logical brain and just go, what in the world is going on here? What is this false thing going on in my brain? It's like there's this part of myself that lies to me. I was thinking of this one Star Trek episode. There was a virus that got aboard the craft there, and everybody fell in love with everybody, and they're all being illogical and irrational. I think it was Dr. Spock that saw what was happening, and he realized that these people were under some kind of hypnosis, and I think it was Spock that slapped Kirk or something like that to try to snap him out of it. He tried to get him angry because he realized that the love thing he was sucked up into, the false love, was actually toxic, but nobody could see it. Anyway, I just thought that was a funny episode.
It says in the Bible to honor your mother and father, that your days may be long and prosperous, or something like that. So even though with all the mistakes we and you have made, because you loved your father and what was in him, it did cause you to make some good decisions, even though there's a lot of mistakes. That shows that process of loving your father. That's how we are supposed to be with God. We don't always understand why he doesn't want us to do certain things, but we do it because we trust him and we love him.
I'm no fool, no siree. I'm going to live to be 103. I actually was working the other day and I started singing that. I thought, I don't know if I want to live to be 103, but I guess okay, whatever. To me, life can be delightful or it can be hell. And that choice is made each morning when we wake up, if we decide to be conscious or unconscious. If we decide to move forward with love, true love, higher love, not the kind of love the world talks about, or just get up and go. Some people just get up and go. They aren't conscious. They go kind of blindly forward. Have you ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? I twisted that a little bit. You can lead a man to wisdom, but you can't make him think. And then I thought about it. I saw The Thinker, the famous statue, The Thinker. And I thought, well, it's all wrong. You don't really have to think. You just need to meditate. So I want to carve out the meditator, but not have a face on him. Just a person, any person, all of us, just sitting in a chair meditating, because that is the gateway to a simple, joyful life. And so many people poo-poo it. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for listening.